Where's
So this
Johnny
is okay.
Mac? Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, every Monday night, 3D Politics, your verbal Viking, your perspicuous pirate plunderer of conversation, Tommy McKay, right here to speak with you about all things important. David Vann from SoonerPolitics.org, an expert on Oklahoma state government, professional advocate for mental health care and state committeeman for the Tulsa County GOP. Also, David Oldham, founder and scholar at Constitutional Grounds, political leader, educational speaker, former state of Oklahoma elector, United States Electoral College, and tonight's special guest, Frank Urbanic, attorney Frank Urbanic with the Urbanic law firm, protecting everyone's rights by standing up to speak for 6 plaintiffs against the governor by shutting them down from trying to make a living after 11 o'clock. Frank, we really appreciate you being here, and especially what you do for everyone. I know I used to work in the restaurant business, and again, the Tulsa County Health Department, there is no less merciful government entity than the health department. And all restaurateurs, it used to be that people were agricultural and they grew their food and they were able to eat because they grew it and they cooked it. But in today's world, to eat, you've got to have people that have restaurants. And we met PJ out there, and it takes guts to stand up because you don't know. I know that Eskimo Joe's last year took some heat about their logo or something. Everybody wanted to freak out about it. And one of my comments about Eskimo Joe's was if you cannot defend your name, you cannot defend your product. And so we've really got to be able to stand up to this cancel culture. And I appreciate you, Frank, for doing it for everybody. Really, it pays off. People have no idea the value. People live in a world where they say, well, somebody will fight against that. Well, you're that guy. So I appreciate that. Anyway, thanks for being here. And you were saying earlier, where were we? We were about where you were. Where were you?
So I'm giving a quick recap on how the big hearing a couple Fridays ago on the injunction went. So their witnesses are on the stand, and the way I feel about it is I basically turned them into my witnesses. I don't think they expected that, but we were able to get a lot of stuff on the record, and let's just say there was a court reporter there. Okay,
good.
So a lot of stuff on the record that does not look good for this administration. And I kept telling everybody, okay, the other attorneys, the plaintiffs, anybody that I could, I'm like, look, guys, we're not here to embarrass anybody, but
they can do it without our help.
But here's, an option where maybe we can, save you the embarrassment. But if we have to, we will go through with the hearing, and I'm confident this hearing will be embarrassing. Probably humiliating, which is what I think happened. Right. And so basically we're able to find out through these witnesses that the governor had hundreds of meetings. We have the chief operating officer of Oklahoma on there who in his sworn statement says that he's in charge of the COVID response. Says he's been to hundreds of meetings with the governor. Oh, great. Well, did they ever talk about enforcement at any of these meetings? Nope. Did anybody ever speak up to say whether these restrictions on businesses through these executive orders was legal? Nope. And so none of this was discussed going all the way back to the beginning in March. And so this guy who's in charge of the COVID response, before this hearing, I found our emergency operations plan, which is what they are supposed to use during an emergency, a declared emergency, obviously, right? And it outlines what each agency is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And in that, it says able is merely a support agency. They're supposed to do things like sharing information, backing up through their law enforcement capabilities, the Department of Public Safety.
Yeah.
So obviously, it doesn't say anywhere in there that they're supposed to be running around ticketing people and threatening with license revocation.
Hiring 17-and-a-half-year-old hotties to go in and buy cigarettes, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So that's not part of our emergency response for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
So I go, okay, you're in charge of our emergency response. You must be really familiar with the emergency operations plan. I wanted to use him to get it introduced as evidence. No, not really.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Aren't you like in charge of our emergency response? Yeah, well, I mean, the governor's declared an emergency, right? No.
This is in court when this is happening?
Yeah, it's in court. And so I'm like,
Crap.
do you know what law the governor has declared an emergency pursuant to? No. I go, okay, opposing counsel, can you get this guy a copy?
What is
now, in fairness, Frank, no one knows what statute.
No, but he should, though. What is
the guy in charge of
what is it? Yeah, thanks.
the emergency response?
What is the
Frank told
judge's?
us earlier, it's the Oklahoma Constitution.
This is insane.
where it says, I'm the governor.
Yes.
But what is the
That's
judge's?
what it basically says. The executive is the governor. I'm the governor. That's what he keeps saying. I'm the governor. Like that is everything we need to know.
Well,
So that means he can issue dictates.
but it gets better. So anyways, he reads it and I guess he learns that the governor did issue an emergency pursuant to the Oklahoma Emergency Management Act. So unfortunately, though, I cannot get this introduced as evidence because the guy's so unfamiliar with it that he wouldn't know, if it was a true and accurate copy. But I just thought that was stunning. So
Yeah.
anyways, everybody, says their part. We get to the closing arguments and I'm going, Judge, we still don't know what authority they're using. They are using a statute, and this is one of the laws that one of the plaintiffs got cited for violating. So this law says that the governor has the authority during a natural disaster or civil disturbance to revoke licenses. Okay. Again, the governor's never declared a disaster, never declared a natural disaster. And so I said, Judge, if their entire house of cards is built on that law, then everything collapses because there's no natural disaster.
Right.
So that was one of their problems. Then I say, Judge, let's say the plaintiffs lose today and Abel goes out tonight, starts enforcing this executive order. What are they going to write on the tickets for the law that these people violated? And we still don't know that. We've gone through this entire hearing and they still haven't told us that. And also, I would like to know, Oklahomans deserve to know, why did the Attorney General in March say this can be a crime? And why is it now a civil infraction? Nobody's talking about anybody getting arrested. And this is, I think, a huge point.
Yeah.
That obviously the other side does not want to have answered, because this raises a lot of questions. Let's just put it that way, as to why you're threatening people with criminal action then and civil action now.
It's basically intimidation. Is that? Am I correct?
Well, I'll let you use that word, but I'm sure your imagination can run wild on.
Well, my imagination is worse. Okay, but I'm just saying that's the word I would use. That's
bottom line is people believed that, and people acted accordingly to that, and people, a lot of businesses went out of business. People couldn't pay their rent or if they paid for food, things like that. So that is, if this case continues, that is something that I can guarantee we will at least attempt to get to the bottom of. So anyways, we don't know what authority they were using, the Abel Commission. And also keep in mind that we never heard anything about any enforcement action against places like IHOP and Denny's that didn't serve alcohol.
Good
so
point.
one of the issues that I raised was,
Right.
why is it only apparently going after people who serve, or businesses that serve alcohol? Why? Who is supposed to be enforced?
Because when you are a hammer and when you're an alcohol hammer, everything is a nail.
Well, IHOP doesn't provide lap dances either.
Well,
Somebody
no, the lap
Those
dances
were
aren't
okay.
illegal.
Hey.
The lap dances were fine. It was the alcohol that was the problem.
Well, I did get Dr. Fry to admit that under the governor's order, under oath, that under the governor's order, it was legal at 11:30 to buy a lap dance from a stripper, but it's illegal to buy a drink from a bartender.
Yes.
So glad we have that settled officially.
Fine hypocrisy.
Wait.
Because that makes us a better society.
Well,
but my question is, what if the bartender was naked?
Loophole.
Yeah, hell yeah, loophole.
So wrapping up these closing arguments. So we still don't know what they're, and so then they get up and I believe in their opening argument, they were saying that they're using this statute that allows the governor to revoke licenses, but they're not revoking licenses. So in my closing, I go, Judge, in one breath, they say they're using a statute that allows the governor to revoke licenses. And then they're saying, we're not revoking licenses. What are they doing? They don't even know what they're doing. And obviously Abel is running around threatening people with license revocation. So then they get up there, and about 10 seconds into his closing argument, she starts asking him questions. One of the questions is my question of, if the plaintiffs win or plaintiffs lose today, what are you going to write on the tickets for the law that they violated? So finally he says,
You're asking the Able Commission person, correct?
No, this is he is the assistant solicitor general, I think. So somebody in the AG's office, okay, is who's doing all of this.
Okay.
And so he gets up there and says they're going to write a violation of the executive order. So if you're counting now, we have the fifth different thing they would have written on these tickets. And it's like,
I don't work for the executive, so
Davids, you quit laughing. This is not funny.
But it's not a law. And that's what we keep trying to get across. And I even told the judge, look, in Texas, they have a law in their government code that says if the governor issues an executive order under an emergency, then that executive order has the full force and effect of law, period. And I said, if they don't have something that says anything like this, what the governor says is not law. And they apparently think it does. But anyway, so the judge made her ruling last week, and she did not address any of the issues, the legal issues that we brought up about the authority. However, she did say that the restraining order is going to remain in effect for 6 more months to give time to have discovery. So we will get an opportunity to potentially depose the governor, depose the attorney general, requests for information, and demands that they answer certain questions under oath. Depending on how things go, those things may happen. Certainly, we'll be seeing if they can have this Google data or not.
Okay, my question is, the judge's order pertains to the specific plaintiffs in that case.
Correct,
but the governor and these agencies have now thrown in the towel on enforcing any of those questionable things.
Right. So going back to the first TRO a couple weeks ago, it applied only to the plaintiffs, but to Abel's credit, they said that they will not be enforcing the executive order on anybody, which it makes sense because theoretically somebody could file a case the next day and win.
Mm-hmm. Arbitrary and capricious.
But then the day after the judge came out with that ruling, the governor issued another executive order that did not have the 11 p.m. curfew in there, but it did have some things in there such as capacity restrictions, social distancing requirements. And I said to the Oklahoman, I said, well, who's going to enforce this? Who are you going to have going from bar to bar with the measuring tape and then ticketing people? I don't think it's going to happen, but they're threatening people with something, I guess. So that's something else that we intend to clean up through the rest of that lawsuit.
Hey, you guys are listening to the continuing education coming from attorney Frank Urbanic, an Urbanic law firm protecting all of us via the restaurateurs that he is protecting and representing in court as plaintiffs, along with David Oldham and David Van. And I am Tommy McKay, your fine host. And Frank, I really appreciate you being here this evening for an extended 3D cross-examination. One of the things that was mentioned in the press release that we sent out for your appearance tonight was that the district court said that Google Analytics actually concludes that mask mandates are ineffective in slowing the viral spread. Tell us.
Right. So they had these witnesses testify that they were there for a presentation where Google came and presented something. So I'm guessing that some sort of data exists, but we don't know what it is. I don't know if we're ever going to figure this out. But one of the things that apparently Google told them was that mask mandates are not effective. So they were careful to make this point is that it's the mandates that are ineffective. It's not the mask wear. That's at least the point they were trying to make.
I tell my wife.
Right. Now, Frank, I just want you to know, I published a story after doing some deep dive on the health departments. They used to do a weekly review back until early December, the week I decided to look into it. And they showed that in municipalities in Oklahoma that had a mask mandate for at least 3 weeks, the spread rate was now higher than in municipalities without one. I published that story, and the next week the health department said, we're no longer doing those weekly updates. They said, we got the data, you go dig in it yourself.
Yeah, and so people keep, or some people keep begging the governor for a mask mandate, but my argument is that our legal arguments against what we actually challenge would apply to a mask mandate as well. So honestly, if the governor wanted to shut these people up, shut us up, he could just say, all right, upon further examination, we don't have the authority to do this. Period. Dot. That's the end of story. And to you know, I don't know why he doesn't do that. It would seem like the easy way out. So governor, if you're listening, or people who know the governor, and you're listening, I mean, you could have had this easy way out a month ago, because that's what we're pushing for, and we would have been perfectly happy without filing the lawsuit. But something like that being put out there, but everybody decided, no, we're going to dig in. We're going to insist that we actually have this authority. The governor has this authority. And now, of course, people are still begging him for a mask mandate. He could just say, I don't have the authority. Done.
Seems like a bluff called. Oldham, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say the Fifth Amendment's been around since 1792, and that's his out. You know, it's like no person shall be deprived of liberty without due process. And it's like, prove the crime, prove the harm. Then if you can't prove the harm, I have not committed a crime.
Yes, no victim, no crime.
So real quick, in our causes of action, so we had like 6 causes of action, and our biggest one was violation of due process, okay? Procedural and substantial due process, because we don't know the law, they don't know the law, we don't know the budget, etc. We don't know how to challenge an accusation of violating that. This gets back to the point you made, David, at the beginning. So some of the tickets that were written, they had dates on there, hearing dates with Abel of like March. And at the first hearing, the judge is like, this hearing's in March. How is somebody supposed to challenge it? I mean, obviously they're going to be like way out of business before they even get to the hearing if they keep following these rules. And then in their closing argument, or the judge addressed this in their closing argument. Are you ready for this? All right, hope everybody's sitting down. They straight up said that Oklahomans do not have constitutional rights during an emergency.
Oh my God. That makes it a lot easier. Thank God, let me tell the one. Honey, we don't have to worry.
Again, we're working on getting the transcript for this.
Please.
Please, I want to see that. I
words.
want that. I want that desperately.
But the judge confronted them with a case that they cited that said that no, people still do have constitutional rights during an emergency. She cited the New York case very recently against Cuomo that says the Constitution doesn't take a backseat during an emergency.
That's right.
And they also had to explain, hey, what's this deal with? Oh, that's right, because I forgot to say it. So in all their pleadings, this statute that they're basing everything on that says it has to be a natural disaster or civil disturbance.
Yeah.
Instead of writing the word natural disaster, they wrote emergency. And in my reply to them, I'm going, you can't do that. This isn't like you're slanting facts or you're arguing facts in the light most favorable to your client. You're literally replacing words in a statute with other words that are more favorable to you that have a different meaning, because in the OEMA, there's a definition for emergency and there's one for natural disaster. And I said, Judge, they're doing that. This should not be tolerated, because obviously they need it to be an emergency because that's all the governor has told us it is.
We would be sunk without people like you, Frank Urbanic.
Well, so then in their closing, thank you. In their closing, they go, well, that's our interpretation of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, when it's defined in law, you don't get an interpretation.
So, Frank,
for you.
Listen, if the governor wants to watch this video, it will be made available to him, believe me. What would you like to advise, supposing you were asked to come in and be legal counsel to the governor? How would you navigate or recommend navigating our way through this?
Just level with the people of Oklahoma, okay?
Oh, that works.
Read the pleadings, listen to what your counsel has said happened there, read the transcript once it's available. But this hearing, it was not pretty, okay? And we tried to avoid this. I have nothing personal against the governor, okay?
Yes.
I'm a registered Republican. It's not a political thing by any means.
Yes.
But just be honest with you. If you don't have the authority, you don't have the authority. You don't, after the fact, when people challenge the authority, make some feeble attempt to concoct authority and make it seem like you had it this entire time. Just level with people and say, upon further review, or even if the ABLE Commission and the health department were to come out and say, upon further review, we don't have the authority to do this. So if the governor wants to, save face and say, keep giving the impression that the governor has the power to do these executive orders, but if you have the people who are enforcing it say that they don't have the authority, then that would be good enough. And just one real quick point is that through my research, I think y'all might find this interesting, is that, of course, there was no penalty in the executive order, and there's no real defined enforcement authority. So based on my interpretation of the Oklahoma Constitution, the real enforcement authority would be our National Guard. Because think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
If there's no punishment for it, then what would really have to happen, again, assuming the governor has the authority, which obviously I dispute that, but you'd have to have the National Guard going from bar to bar in their Humvees with guns pointed at people, saying either you stop serving at 11 or we're going to force you to do that at gunpoint. It makes sense, because if there's no punishment, then the only other option is to stop them from doing it by force.
Since we're in a state of insurrection, of course.
Well, I think the optics would be very bad to do that.
So, I actually want to stop on something that is philosophical in nature, and let me know if I'm picking at something that's not there. But you said just now, if there's no enforcement, I think if I'm recalling, then there's no other recourse than stopping them by physical force. Is that correct?
Right. Because
am I recalling that correctly?
Right. Because so in our Constitution, the only agency that the governor has under his direct control to to enforce the law and to protect the peace and health of the public is the militia or the National Guard. Yeah. And so if he was serious about enforcing these executive orders, then based on my research, and if I were advising him, I'd say your only option is to mobilize the National Guard to do that. Obviously, he's not going to do that. That would look terrible. But you can't have these various agencies like the Able Commission basically self-deputizing themselves as the militia.
But what the reason I'm pointing at that is because this is, people talk about slippery slope, but I'm saying bull crap. There's a fulcrum issue, because there's a point where you get to that you're bringing out, Frank, and that is that you get to the point where if you're not gonna, if there is no enforcement defined and no punishment defined, then all you're going to do is bring in 100% stop them with force. I mean, it's just, there's no slippery slope. You just flop over into totalitarian.
That's my interpretation of, because think about it. Let's say a tornado hits Oklahoma City, right? Well, if you want to maintain peace and order, if you need a curfew or whatever, whether you agree with it or not, but whether you need it, you're not going to have able agents running in giving tickets for a hearing 3 months from now. The person, opens up the next day. No, you're going to have the National Guard saying, hey, the governor issued a curfew. You need to shut down and get out. You need to do whatever. That's what's going to happen, because obviously that sort of situation is what this law was designed for. It wasn't designed for a pandemic.
Well, and I'm hoping that we can have, at some point, we have the broader discussion, because we faced this with Katrina back in 2004, 5, whenever that was, when we had Oklahoma National Guardsmen on national TV down there willing to shoot homeowners who were in their own homes, protecting them from the looters. Yeah. And it was an Oklahoma National Guardsman who had said, I signed up for this. It's like, no, I don't think you did, because they have the right to their own property, and the governor cannot tell you to your own property, no matter the natural disaster. Okay. So I'm hoping people will think about it. We'll have that discussion at some point.
And I think we are. It's my understanding that there will be at least legislation introduced to
that's what I wanted to get at, and I'll set this up, maybe answered after the break, is we've got a lot we can blame on the prudence and discretion of our governor, but the legislature is not blameless. And I'm talking specifically the public safety committees and judiciary committees. Frank, I'd like you to speak to them. How do they fix this mess?
So I think at the bare minimum, the ability for a governor to have these endless emergency declarations needs to stop, because I don't think that's what it was intended for. If you have an emergency, you deal with the emergency and then it's done. And a true emergency doesn't last for a year, right? Unless maybe, we're being invaded. But no, there needs to be some sort of a sunset provision, just like is in the Catastrophic Health Emergency Act of 30 days. And then it's renewed by the legislature. If it's not renewed, then it doesn't happen anymore. But to give the governor this authority for perpetual emergency, then no, I think that's what needs to be fixed.
Okay. So we use the health emergency legislation as a model and bring the other levers, the natural disaster and state of riot, and say, follow the template you have here with health emergency, right?
Right. For that particular issue, I would also say in the Riot Control Act is to take the authority away from the cities, the municipalities, to declare a disaster when none has been declared by the governor. For a riot, yeah, I can see, things are unfolding really quickly, but I would say for a disaster, if the governor hasn't declared a disaster, there's no reason for a mayor to declare a disaster so he can threaten people with 6 months in jail.
Gentlemen, we're closing in on the hour. I want to reset. Frank Urbanic, tell everybody where we can find you for your fine counsel.
Yes, you can reach me at urbanic.law. Urbanic.law. Thank you.
Urbanic.law. Frank Urbanic here, protecting everybody via 6 plaintiffs Once again, Tommy McKay here with David Van and David Oldham on 3D Politics. You guys, I'm going to reset this to go on for another half hour, and we will break for just a second to reset our accounting here. Hang tight, kids.
Thank you so much, Frank. Good seeing you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just hit the red button then, and you're done.
This is beautiful, kids. Hang tight, everybody. We're taking off. Oh, yeah, baby. Trust me. All right, here we go, kids. The American Constitutional Republic affairs of the state of Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people like you right here. This is 3D Politics with your fine host, your verbal Viking, Tommy McKay, and of course, David Van, creator and editor of SoonerPolitics.org, David Oldham, founder and constitutional scholar right there at constitutionalgrounds.com. And tonight, our special guest, Attorney Frank Urbanic, protecting all of us through 6 simple plaintiffs in Oklahoma. Frank, we really appreciate this in-depth study on how it all works out there. I know I'm a little bit slow on the uptake because I hang out with people who are smarter than me to make me smarter. But simply what you're saying is almost all the way back to the beginning. If the governor wants to declare a state of emergency, whether it's a riot or health, all he has to, the way he does that is through executive order. Is that correct? Or is there some other way?
Right. Yeah, it would be through an executive order and also a disaster as well. So we're
so he'd never. Okay.
We're technically under a state of emergency right now, but no, he has not declared a disaster of any sort.
Right.
And so that's one of the issues that we're using to say that no, they can't do any of this. And I would hope that he wouldn't all of a sudden now declare it a disaster when it's been going on.
Except that the health emergency, which is the appropriate one here, does require the legislature to concur with his executive order, right?
Right. Yeah. And he and it can only keep going if the legislature allows it to keep going. So that would be a very welcome change for the OEMA.
Yes. Yep. For sure.
So other questions, gentlemen?
I had one. Talk to the restaurant owner. How do they survive? How do they? What's their posture? You know, obviously you found a few who are brave. They took some risks because they could have been made to pay the governor's legal bills if they lost. Is that correct?
I mean, I guess potentially. I would think the chance of that would have been very low because it would not be a mandatory thing, and it would be in the interest of justice, right? I mean, they are government employees, so they get paid the same as as if this lawsuit would not have happened. But yeah, for the restaurants out there, I hope y'all are thankful of the plaintiffs who did step up, because they really did stand in the place of every restaurant and bar and nightclub owner. And the people who this hit really hard are the nightclubs. Certainly the bars, it hit pretty hard, but a lot of bars are open most of the days of the week. They're open during the day, so they at least have that business to kind of keep them going. But like Western Nights and Redneck Yacht Club,
I gotta say, when you say it hits the bars, who goes to the bars? That's who it hits. I'm sorry. When it hits the bars, who goes to the bars? That's who it hits. It hits the patrons, the people who cannot go to the places that serve them the food and drink. Because not anybody makes their own beer and their food anymore. Where do we get it? We go to those places who provide it. And so it's literally they're attacking the neo-agrarian society.
Well, beyond that, and it's not just the businesses, it's The people who work there, the bartenders, the waiters, the waitresses,
Indeed.
the DJs. So on the Oklahoma City case, we actually had a couple of I think bartenders, a DJ, and I guess that was it. But we wanted to show that there was a spectrum of people and entities that that got impacted. It's not just some business. There's people behind these businesses.
Right. That's
not only the owners, but the people who depend upon all of these businesses to survive. I mean, you have a bartender and now at a nightclub, and now they're being told that really they can't even come into work anymore.
Yeah.
At the end of the week, what are they going to do? They can't find a job to replace that within a couple of days. And with Stitt's order, and especially the mayor's order, what these essentially were was de facto shutdown orders. Because while he can say, hey, you know, we left open options to where they could still stay in business and do business and all that. Well, yeah, okay, technically somebody can get their last drink at 10:59 and stay around for a little while. But in all reality, if the place opens at 8 or 9, who's really going to even go there if they know they're going to be kicked out at 11 o'clock? Or they have to buy their last drink at 11 o'clock. People just aren't going to go. So it's not like these places were going to stick around and just kind of, you know, barely make a little bit of money. It's that these places just weren't going to open. Like Six Shooter Saloon, I think they opened like 1, maybe 2 nights after the ordinance or the proclamation and the executive order went into place. And then they just shut down because each of these places had to make a business decision. How am I going to lose less money? And so they figured, okay, well, I'm losing less money by just shutting down entirely than I would by having.
Also, let me also point out that months and months before now, they were encouraged to spend money on plexiglass and scrub bottles and all these other maneuvers as though that would be what government would say. Oh, yeah, now you can go ahead and do business. And then they're like, oh, no. Now, still no. You're like, well, screw, you know what we did, and we bent over in every fashion we could in the restaurant business, and yet still, like the Tulsa City County Health Department, it's still not good enough.
Yeah.
It's never good enough.
And I found another aspect of this. The federal government has something called the CARES Act, where and it doesn't benefit the private sector. It benefits governments who have been harmed in their tax base by economic shutdowns. And so it reimburses them so that it actually gives an incentive to government to shut these down because they know they're not going to suffer in the state funding because the federal government's going to bail them out. Nobody's there to bail out the dishwasher or the bartender, you know, or the waitress or whoever, you know, so it really bothers me. You know, my mother says nothing good happens after midnight. So why are you out that late? But there's a culture that, hey, that is their social time.
Look, I worked when I was 17 until after 11 tearing tickets at the Bowman Twin. And then there was a curfew came out, you know, later when I was an adult. And it was like, there are minors who work paying FICA for the streets. You're throwing a blanket curfew over minors. This is one of the problems we have, Frank. They conflate in government terms like minor that could be a 17-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so, I mean, they conflate these gigantic stretches and they start making restrictions on people who are tax-paying citizens, and then they say, well, you know, a 5-year-old shouldn't be out after midnight. Well, right, except for I'm 17, you know, but you're a minor, you know. So, I mean, this concept of governments by de facto, I mean, is this the kind of, this is the correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though Stitt was operating with authority in a void. He wasn't even claiming he had the authority, and yet he was making decisions as though he had the authority.
Yeah, and that's something that that's something that we want to get to the bottom of is why did they think that what they were doing was legal? How did they come to that decision? Especially the discrepancy between what the Attorney General said in March and what happened in and what they did with civil violations in November. So hopefully we will for the benefit of Oklahomans get to the bottom of that. But kind of to go beyond the point you made about government by whatever, is that what about government by Google? I actually use that phrase in the hearing, because this is very scary. Is Google comes in, they give this presentation that says whatever, and then now our government does whatever Google says to do? Is that how we operate now? And I said, is this government by Google? I don't think so. And so that's something Oklahomans should or deserve to know. Why are we just doing whatever Google says? And some of the things that were brought out in the hearing are like, well, who are the people that did this analysis? Are they doctors? Are they just data analysts? Who programmed this? What data did they look at? So nobody knows any of this stuff. Yet our governor made this decision based almost entirely on that. That's scary as hell.
That's correct.
Well, I learned something just recently about quo warranto. I don't know how much you're familiar with that. It's basically Latin for show me the warrant. In other words, the governor would have to, if we presented him with a quo warranto writ, he would have to give account for his decisions behind there. And if he couldn't, he would lose his job. And I'm wondering how we might be able to leverage that with Article 15, Section 2, oath of office, where he violates his oath of office by usurping powers that the Constitution doesn't grant him. And so if we do that, can we use that on the governor, on the Able Commission, or the commissioners, the health department, Dr. Dart, and mayors and so forth? What do you think? Can we maybe?
I will leave that for the legislature to decide. I mean, if this certainly can go in a certain direction that would be very unpleasant for the governor that you just kind of outlined. Yes, that would be up for the legislature to decide, and maybe they make their decision on what we're able to uncover. So that'll definitely be something to watch for. But no, one of our claims was a violation of the separation of powers, is that he was legislating on his own, because this regulation of businesses, it's not an executive order that says, hey, this department, I want you to go do this, or I want you to spend this money in a certain way.
That's correct.
No, this was, hey, private business and private citizen, you are supposed to act in this certain way. And if you don't, then, there's going to be some sort of punishment that I will decide. And that is a purely legislative act. And so that was one of our causes of action that maybe in the future the legislature can use that for whatever they want to use it for.
Let me make this a little more redemptive. I've talked to some people who know you who are in the legislature, some who I'm not going to mention names, but they've consulted you. And they said, I want to help the governor be successful. Now, they haven't said this, but I get the sense that they're having a little bit tougher time being a cheerleader for the governor. And I don't think you look at the governor as necessarily your enemy. You would like to find a resolution that's in the name of liberty. Absolutely. How could we help get the governor to where he needs to be? Obviously, it seems like he's getting the wrong counsel. I will just blame it on the wrong advisors.
And before his answer, you got a second to think about it, because once again, Scotty's reminding me that every 15 minutes, and we're rolling it down like a beast. Tonight, Tommy McKay, your fine host here on 3D Politics every Monday night. And of course, David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. Tonight, our fantastic and special guest attorney, Frank Urbanic from the Urbanic Law Firm, who is standing up for everyone's rights via 6 plaintiffs and all that against the governor. So, Frank, your answer now.
Well, throughout this entire ordeal, we have given them numerous opportunities for off ramps. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
They have not taken us up on any of those. They just dug in every single time. And every time they do something in public, it just gets worse and worse for them. They've known this, and yet they keep doing it. So the first rule of getting out of a hole when you're digging is to stop digging. So that's first of all what they need to do. But for once is to listen to what our side is saying and actually understand it and realize that you don't have the authority to do this. And I think the hearing on a couple Fridays ago, it was painfully obvious that their arguments were very strained. So I would be willing to sit down with the governor, obviously with his legal counsel there, to directly give him my perspective and how I think that we could all end this to where it doesn't look as bad on him. Because again, the longer this goes, the worse it looks for him. So if history is any guide, if we have to get to a trial, then it's
okay. How about with the legislature? There are some very conciliatory voices in the legislature who'd like to work this out in a consensus way. If a committee chair wanted to have you come in, speak to a committee, are you still offering your same advice? I don't know if you're billing hourly rates on that or.
Oh no, yeah, no, I wouldn't charge to go do that, but yeah, I'd definitely be glad to give my perspective on things. But I mean, it all comes down to the authority that all of these people have, and I feel confident that the legislature is not going to be granting either him or the Able Commission any extra authority. Okay.
That's
if anything, it's going to go the other way. Why?
Certainly
because of what's going on here. Had this thing not been so completely bungled, then, maybe nothing would be happening. Certainly wouldn't be at least an attempt to restrict his power and the Able Commission's power. And so it's like, do you think after all this, let's say that the Able Commission does an emergency rule that says, okay, now we can start enforcing this. You think the legislature is going to let that happen? No, the legislature can overturn these emergency rules.
Yeah.
So had they tried to do this, months ago, they probably would have been just fine. But now that we've gone through all of this, I feel confident and really hope that the legislature would overturn any attempt for a power grab by any administrative agency so that they could do what they were trying to do.
And that's why I say, I think the governor agrees with you on that. And that's why he waited till one day after the 57th legislature was dissolved, their terms ended, and then waited the next day and called the special session and then claimed, now it was just 3 weeks ago, he said, well, I don't know if we can call a special session until they have their organizational day on the 5th of January. So I think he was utilizing that void to say, I'm going to rule by fiat.
Well, I can't get into what he's thinking, what his personal feelings are.
That's my
or his
job.
Motivations.
I do that.
But I don't know what people are telling him. It seems like from the beginning, it probably was not much. Probably just did this, and then they thought, okay, nobody's going to challenge this. It's something that we may get to the bottom of. But in the end, if he doesn't have the power, or the Able Commission doesn't have the power, he doesn't have the power. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It is okay for him to not have the power. And hopefully that message can get across, is that just because you don't have the power that doesn't mean that now you should start creating the power on your own to do what you think you should do. No, what you do is you figure out how you can legally get the power, and you go that route. If you thought this was a big enough issue in November, then call a special session of the legislature, see if you could get some legislation passed to allow this sort of regulation during an emergency. Maybe bring it up this legislative session, but do it the right way.
Or you just say to the people of Oklahoma that your government set it up in such a way that you're responsible citizens for your own protection. You use prudence. Don't blame the governor. We're not here to be your nanny. We don't want more power.
And that's okay. And that's what it's mind-boggling that, and what you said there is really the easiest answer to all of this, right? Because if that would have happened in the beginning, none of this would have happened.
Yes.
Right? And then nobody looks bad. I wouldn't have spent all this time working on it. I could have spent way more time with my family. That would have been great. And you know what? These bar and restaurant owners would not have thought they would be going out of business soon.
Yes.
And everybody would look great, but it just seems to have spiraled out of control. And you know whose fault it is not? Mine.
Yeah.
Right.
All their fault.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, boy,
Beautiful.
ain't that the truth. That
Beautiful.
is the truth. And it's amazing, my mom used to tell me years ago that if just one person will stand up, and say what's right, other people, I think that's a damned lie. Personally, I think Frank Urbanic stand up, and only me and these two other guys and 6 plaintiffs did. It is hard out there. Really, it is hard to simply stand up for your simple private property ownership rights out there. And it's amazing how you're like, Madame Curie. All you're doing is just looking at reality, and you're going, well, he doesn't even have any legal basis for what he says he's, and you're just like, Shazam, we all figured something out, when all you're doing is looking at basic law and logic, So I'm not trying to minimize what you're doing. It's thank God for you, or otherwise one person wouldn't have looked at it. And 6 plaintiffs, because you gotta have, you can't lead an army unless you got some people behind you. So,
well, you're right. It is fundamental. Do you have the authority? And when all this started off, I was posting on Facebook. I'm like, what is his authority? Because I don't know. I'm trying to ask people, and some people said,
truth.
Well, he obviously has the authority because he did it. And I'm going, that's not how our system works. Okay, that's
what Oldham was saying. Because I'm the governor. That's because I'm your dad.
That is not how our system works. And then when I started seeing all these inconsistencies, and other attorneys did some great research, Ben Lepak, he wrote a great article about the Riot Control
1889 Institute, right?
And I do have to thank him as well, because he provided the intellectual heavy lifting really for the Oklahoma City case.
Say who that is again, please.
Ben Lepak, he's another attorney. At that time he worked for a think tank in Oklahoma, and he wrote a brilliant article analyzing what the mayors did, and with relation to the RCPA and others, and that provided the basis for the Oklahoma City lawsuit. It almost entirely wrote one of my pleadings.
Ben's been one of my bloggers with 1889 Institute. He's on Sooner Politics, so I got to plug them. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize for not mentioning him earlier, but no, that provided the foundation almost entirely of, I think, our petition in the Oklahoma City case, because it was focused on RCP.
Let me just interrupt to say, Frank, early on when we set up this interview, was clear, made it clear. It's not just Frank Urbanic. He's got an entire legal team. It's working with him. It's not just a one-man show. There are people that are supporting him, helping him, like-minded, et cetera, at the Urbanic law firm. So it's not just one guy out there. He's got people that are working for and with him. So we appreciate you and your team doing this. Oldham, what else have you got for us?
Well, I'm just really thankful for the way everything's going. I'm hoping people will have a wake up call delivered. I loved our discussion with PJ on Saturday. her boldness to just do, literally be civilly disobedient to the powers who are unconstitutionally exercising supposed authority, and it turns out it's all a sham, it's all a lie.
Yeah, it's thugs.
And these people come into her place and never cite her for what she's obviously breaking of their rules. No masking. I mean, it's lovely. You go into Tulsa and there's no mask. She gave me permission to mention no mask. A different inspector every single week. They now have inspectors from the health department.
Harassment.
And they're nailing her for a light bulb or something like that. And it's stupid stuff. And she's talking with them without a mask in her open bar. And she never gets a mention about everything, with masks.
Yeah, I was super.
I think the takeaway is we, the people, have got to stand up, be civilly disobedient, and then take it to them in court. Because if you don't, you're going to be like that bar that got promoted on Facebook just as I came on, so I share. Opened up after 10 months of closure, finally opened up with plexiglass and social distancing tape and markers and special seats and everything, so everybody's far apart in a bar. 10 months closed in Oklahoma City.
Yep.
And so anyway, thank you, Frank, for doing your part. I just appreciate it.
I was super impressed with PJ, who not only is she managing the bar down there and serving drinks and etc., but she actually showed up at the hearing. She was well versed on what happened at the hearing. She was literally there. And it seemed to me there wasn't even a shred in her mind. There was no, I can't do this because government tells me. She's just like free in her inherent generic DNA. She's like, well, no, I just can. And they can't tell me I can't, and Urbanic law firm is the people who was just fighting it in court. So I just loved it. I'll be going out there again.
Yeah.
And, I've been in small business before. I know that it takes a lot to stand up for your name and your product, and you literally have to think about it before you take a stand to know whether you're going to survive or not. And so they kind of pick their clientele. And so I'll be going back. But I appreciate Frank. Gentlemen, I know we're closing in on a long show. We're headed to an hour and a half. Anybody got anything else before we might want to let Frank go if he's got anything else, and
Frank,
then we can close it out.
Yeah, Frank, you want to just hit the red button when you're done there, and we'll just look for you down the road.
Frank, before you get out of here, once again, where do we find Frank Urbanic and the Urbanic law firm?
At urbanic.law, and normally I'm a criminal defense attorney, so if you get arrested, don't panic, call Urbanic.
There it is. Don't panic.
Call
the
money
line. Let me ask you, because I may get arrested one of these days.
God forbid. God forbid.
With that?
God forbid, right? I don't want anybody getting
arrested. Look, I'm not looking for it, but we're telling me I can't do stuff I know I can do. I'm going to push them, and I'm going to, they're going to have to play. It's going to come down to a showdown. Do you have offices in Tulsa as well, or do you serve just the Oklahoma City area? Or what?
Oh, no, it's just me. I have an office in Oklahoma City. I'll travel all over the state, but there's so many attorneys in Tulsa that I really don't go there. If you want to hire me for Tulsa, I will certainly go, but I don't go there.
Meter runs, doesn't it?
Right. Well, it's been a great pleasure to meet you, Attorney Frank Urbanic from the Urbanic Law Firm. Once again, thanks for standing up for everyone's rights through these 6 plaintiffs. And we'll be going back out there to PJ's in Tulsa once again. Frank, we hope to have you back again. Please come back and inform us once again with all the things you're doing out there. And we're going to send you away now. Oh my gosh, there it is telling us. There he goes. And so once again, Frank Urbanic Law Firm, there he goes. I'm taking him out. Thanks again. Very good. Dave, way to go, Van, for setting us up. Oldham, how did you like that one?
I love it.
Didn't that just kick it?
Defense
Anything
of
Cube
freedom
wants
is
in there.
always good. Always good. So,
Gentlemen, we are in the final minute of an hour and a half. Do you want to keep going with these other things, or do you want to kill it?
I've got about 4 or 5 just real short things that
let's knock 'em
just
out. Let's
5
just knock
minutes.
'em out.
All
Okay.
right, we're going to knock them down, but let me set it up again because we're right at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening once again to 3D Politics, the most amazing show on Facebook Live every Monday night, right here with Tommy McKay, your fine verbal Viking, and David Oldham from Constitutional Grounds, and of course, David Van with SoonerPolitics.org. We're starting it up once again. Tommy drags his feet to make sure that it all gets going once again. We're into another amazing half hour. We just finished off with Frank Urbanic from Urbanic Law Firm, protecting everybody's rights with 6 simple plaintiffs. Tommy McKay right here, your verbal Viking with David Oldham, David Van. We've got a few more things to knock down tonight. We've got the conspiracy theories, the Broken Arrow City Council mask mandate, the legislative update, the COVID update. It's all going wild.
Yeah.
Oh my God, can you believe all the beef we've had? The beef tonight. Anyway. All right, you guys, what have you got?
All right. SoonerPolitics.org is where you'll find these stories. I'm not going to put them up on screen. I just want to tell you, I wrote an article last week that's gotten a bunch of mileage, and it shows how our state-owned power plants called the Grand River Dam Authority, a flood control effort back in the 1930s, that kind of morphed over into, well, if we're going to do a dam, let's do a hydroelectric dam and get some power and help pay some bills. And whatever's left over, we'll give to the legislature to help fund state government. Except they never did. And so they keep their prices below the corporate power companies that do pay state taxes and thus do have to actually charge higher rates for electricity. But guess who the number one, as far as I can tell, number one power customer of Grand River Dam Authority is? It's a Google mega server just south of Pryor Creek, Oklahoma. And they're getting, I talked to a bank.
What do they need all that power for?
Oh gosh, you would know. 4 substations. I thought it was 3, but I went up there yesterday, took a look, and they're building the 4th substation to provide power right there in that little 1 square mile area.
David Van's doing reconnaissance for 3D Politics.
Well, I had to be up there in business. Now,
don't tell him
the client I was taking care of, this is a guy who's well connected, and I really don't want to divulge his name, or I may lose a client over it. Okay?
I call it reconnaissance for 3D Politics.
And I said to him, is that true? That's the lowest priced electricity in the United States? He said, no, Dave, in the world, when you do currency conversion, and I won't say it, this guy knows currency conversion, in the world, okay? Wow. And then get this, Grand River Dam Authority now is branching out. They've got wind farms in western Oklahoma. So you've got this entity that was paid for, set up by the taxpayers of Oklahoma 85 years ago. And now instead of the people of Oklahoma benefiting, they set it up as a trust, as an authority where they self-fund forever. And the legislature has this mindset of, well, since they aren't asking us for money, who are we to tell them what to do? And the problem is they're funding one of the worst underminers of civil rights in the world. Yep. They're doing the bidding of the Communist Chinese Party. You know, and so it's getting a lot of mileage. And what can the legislature do? They can do a lot. Do they want to do anything? That's my question. How many of them are already getting money? Because I tell you, you go up there, it's not popular. Google is paying so much in county property taxes that their school district is the wealthiest in the state, you know, and gets no state funds. Google is basically paying for all their kids' education out there. So that's one story. Look it up, soonerpolitics.org. Medical marijuana. The taxes are now overtaking alcohol in Oklahoma. Who knew? I mean, it's just right now, it's just, yeah, it's about neck and neck. 1 out of every 10 Oklahomans is a licensed medical marijuana patient under a doctor's care. Okay. 1 out of every 10.
I just found out my stuff is not for sale on the dark web. It's on sale on the light brown web.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
That's
All right.
outrageous. And now, mind you, that's 1 out of 10 who are doing it within the statutes.
Right.
Yeah.
And not and that doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of people, patriots, who, like myself, would use it without any sort of legal cover, because we know how things stand.
Did you say did or would?
Neither would, because I will neither confirm nor deny whether I am. So
Are you now, or have you ever?
Yes. Okay. So
I learned that a long ago when my brother was in the Navy.
Everybody
I shall
knows
neither
that
confirm nor deny.
Okay. So here's another one. The COVID news. Do you know the last 3 holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day, on record, the 3 biggest spike days were 3 days after each of those. Okay, that's when we had. So this whole narrative of the super spreader get together, there's data there that says, of course it's their data. If it's accurate, it says, yeah, when you get together with all the aunts, uncles, cousins, relatives, and that you've got that problem. But here's the other thing. It's been going down since January 3rd, January 4th. It's been going down. Our doubling rate is spacing out. Things are getting better. There's even better news. Do you know how many kids in Oklahoma, according to the records, have died? How many kids under 18? One. All of our public schools are shut down because 1 kid died.
If we can save just that one kid by shutting down,
we will destroy every kid's education.
I will tell you that that's not why they're shutting down.
Oh.
They're shutting down because the teachers are terrified to teach, that the teachers are going to catch it.
Get
the
a new
teachers
job.
Want to do their job. That's the problem.
They don't have to work there.
I'm just saying.
That's right. No, you're right on.
What's going on?
The problem with the education department, they think it exists for the teachers. It's for the kids of our state. Thank you.
If the teachers are terrified, they teach the children to be terrified.
There's your motive.
You think?
Yes. All right. Now, I promise legislative update. I got one bill. I want to salute a new guy
and I
coming
told the
back.
wife, honey, he's missing the legislative update.
Yeah. Okay. Representative Rick West stepped out of the legislature 2 years ago, let Lundy Kiger in. Then he had to come back, run against Lundy, defeated him in the primary.
Yeah,
Rick's back. Huh?
Yeah, what was that all about?
He finds out that our law enforcement, I think he's got a background in law enforcement himself, that we're allowing people who aren't even U.S. citizens. Now, they have to be here legally, but they can be green card. And ends up, CLEAT has the ability to make these people enforce laws on you and me, and they aren't even U.S. citizens. Okay? So he's passed a law that says, no, you got to be a U.S. citizen if you're going to be the expert on this, instead of just somebody who despises the fact that I'm a citizen and the cop isn't.
Wow.
I salute him for that.
David, they don't have to know Constitution. They don't have to have taken their Constitution class in order to pass either CLEAT or, their citizenship test. And so since none of that is valid or cared about, then it's perfectly okay for these people.
Yeah. Okay.
To,
wait a minute. Now,
right.
Oldham, you're going to get to say, now, Tom, here in just a second. Here, so now, to play the devil's advocate, you don't need to be a U.S. citizen to say, hey, buddy, you're doing something illegal. I mean, if someone
Okay.
like a child could say the truth, and the truth is the truth, doesn't
Yeah.
matter who's the truth. So who cares if they're a legal
Well,
citizen? I mean, it's like,
listen,
Well,
if you're
and,
like, hey, you're
and let's
breaking
face
into
it.
a,
I'm
And let's
I'm a
face
ho-
it.
am I wrong?
I'm a
No,
home
let's face it. That the U.S. military has done this for years. They bring in non-citizens and they offer them U.S. citizenship if they serve our country
Okay.
as a
if
non-citizen.
right, if they're here legally, that's true, and that's
Right.
fighting in foreign wars as an enlisted man,
Okay.
not as somebody who is in charge of telling our civilians how to live. That's what I have a problem with.
But I mean,
Okay,
okay. All right.
okay. In the last legislative update, now I'm not ready to put this to print, but I can give you a preliminary report.
It's like a
Oldham, you were
threat. I like it.
oh,
that's like a threat from Van.
this no this is a scoop. This is a breaking
Okay.
thing
All
here.
right. All
We'll
right.
end the show with this. Oldham, you were with me last February. We were up in the 5th floor, the cheap seats, the low rent offices where the Democrats are.
Admit it.
And right, and then Representative Fugate calls me back in, and you came in with me, and he
Right.
said they want to make it harder for the citizens by initiative petition to pass either a referendum or a
Yep.
statute or a constitutional amendment.
Okay.
Correct.
And he just asked us point blank, are you guys supporting this?
No.
And we both said no. They wanted to make it where you had to be well funded, which probably
Correct.
means bringing out of state money in order to change anything in Oklahoma.
Right.
From
And I
the
told
citizen's perspective, from citizen's petition. Correct.
right. Now, what I said to him, I said, now, if it was a constitutional initiative petition to change our constitution, I would be in favor of a higher bar or percent of approval than just 50% plus one. That's the reform I would like
Correct.
to see. So anyway, I've talked to several legislatures. I found today at least 4 bills, at least 4 different authors saying, yeah, we're going to make it harder for you to go around and gather signatures because we're going to make you get it equally all over the state, a minimum all over the
Right.
state, which
Right.
basically means unless you're
Oh.
well funded.
Damn it. That's just like that. That's just gerrymandering.
Sure.
That's just gerrymandering. That's like,
Right.
you gotta exist in these areas. Yeah.
Okay. 2 bills, though, in addition to those 4. One coming from State Senator John Haste, instead approached it just saying, okay, we're not going to change the signatures you got to get, but when we bring it to the ballot vote of the people, Haste wants it 60% for anything, including initiative petition for a statute or for a referendum. I can't agree with John on all that. On changing the Constitution, I'm in lockstep with him on that. The other one was Representative Scott Fettgatter. So I gave him a call today. We talked about it. I said, I want you to know of all these bills, I'm pretty much closest to you. You're going after the low-hanging fruit. You're focusing on it's too easy to change our Constitution to where the legislature can't even tweak a poorly written initiative petition language. And so Fettgatter's going to get with Haste and maybe some others and see if they can. And by the way, Fettgatter says, tell everybody, if you look up his bill now, he knows there's Scrivener's errors. There's problems with it. He just had to hurry up and get the rough draft up. So watch what Fettgatter does. There's room for him to improve it. But that's one I told him to get with Fugate, get with the Democrats. If we can get that passed, hopefully we can forestall the Republican leadership's efforts to kill the initiative petition, the rights of the citizens to go around the legislature and the governor when they won't deal with something. So that's my report.
Very good, Van. That's what we expect from you these days. Finger on the pulse of Oklahoma state government. David Van with SoonerPolitics.org. We appreciate that. Oldham, what else have you got before we get out of here?
Tomorrow night, our friends in Broken Arrow, and Tulsa, actually anybody throughout Oklahoma who comes to Broken Arrow to shop, to work, to do anything, to visit, come out to the Stony Creek Hotel and Convention Center, because there is a special city council meeting. There is yet another mask mandate and optional resolution meeting. They're having a special council meeting. It's going to have a bunch of other business in it. It's going to be a regular council meeting, basically, but they're going to be including these mask mandate stuff. And we are arguing, want to fill the room. Do not worry about coming out with a mask. If you don't want to come out with a mask, don't come out with a mask. It's being held at the convention, at the Hotel and Convention Center, so that we can have plenty of room. That will be the non-mask place and where the city council will meet. If you want to wear a mask and you're desperate to wear a mask and you will only be around other fellow maskers, go to City Hall in Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow, Stony Creek, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. Come ready to speak on 2 issues, because there's going to be 2 resolutions to address. And hopefully we'll have them going into the wee hours of the morning on this. And who knows how it's going to go, but we are out there trying to save at least one city in Tulsa County.
There you go.
So,
Very good. Awesome, Oldham. We appreciate that update. Van, anything else?
In Wednesday, be ready for anything. I've heard the most wild conspiracy theories. I'm just going to get a bowl of popcorn and hook up several TVs, and hopefully they won't all go black before the day is done.
Oh, please.
I mean, the theories I'm hearing, my God, they say Alex Jones is in on the conspiracy, okay? You know it's bad when Alex Jones is the subject of conspiracy theories.
I've been accused of being a hardcore Trump supporter, and I haven't got any news of where I'm supposed to go break down something and take over yet. So I'm like, I'll just ask the wife when I'm supposed to rule the world.
Right.
She'll tell me.
But, people are trying to figure out, why do we have 40,000 troops in an empty Washington, D.C. federal mall?
So they said they were vetting these National Guard guys. You know what that equals? Recruiting for Biden's American Red Guard. All they're doing, they got 25,000 military guys there, and they're quote unquote vetting, which means all they're doing is recruiting for the communist militaristic government that's going to protect Harris. Sorry,
right. And you want to know who's vetting them?
Who?
The FBI, the stellar of integrity.
You can trust them, because what's-her-face sleeps with anybody that has information on Trump.
Okay, and here's my thing. I'll say this for anyone listening. If you're a member of the National Guard, you do not answer to the FBI. They can talk to your commanding officer. Name, rank, and serial number. That's it.
Hey,
let's also remind our friends in the military that they have taken an oath, and they are to be keepers of that oath. And that means that they are not to be obeying unlawful orders. And so if an unlawful order comes down, they must disobey it.
And further, they must defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Correct.
That's active defense of the Constitution. Correct. That's not just passive refusal. That's not just civil disobedience.
Ladies and gentlemen, it just never stops with these guys.
Excuse me. Wait. And do it peacefully and patriotically.
Oh, yeah, that.
Whenever possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, 3D Politics every Monday night, 7 p.m.-ish, with David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and of course me, Tommy McKay, your verbal Viking and fine host at 3D Politics. Find me at Tommy McKay at Facebook and on Twitter. And we just really want to thank Frank Urbanic from the Urbanic Law Firm for coming out tonight, spending all that time explaining how it is that he's defending all of our rights through the restaurateurs and his voice against the governor. Gentlemen, we'll see you guys next week.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.